All right, everyone. Welcome to the first ever EMU TENTalks. It is my privilege to have our speakers here with us today. I want to introduce our host for the day, Liza Hebner, who's a 2007 graduate out of Philadelphia. She is the vice president of the Alumni Association and a fantastic individual. If you want to get to know her, I would suggest you do that after the program. Liza?
TENTalks here are going to be highlighting three fabulous EMU alums, really talking about their journey since EMU and their time here. And I have the honor of kicking us off with our first intro. So our first speaker today is Erik Kratz. Many of you are probably familiar with him. He is a 2002 EMU graduate who started his baseball career at Christopher Dow, and he actually grew up just a stone's throw or a baseball throw away from my own backyard in Souderton, Pennsylvania. Following his time at Christopher Dow, he came here to EMU until he was drafted by the Blue Jays in 2002. After 7 years of playing with the minor league affiliates, he signed a deal to play with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Any fans? Pittsburgh Pirates? Oh, all right. To play for the Indianapolis Indians. In 2011, he signed a minor league deal with the Phillies. Play as their backup catcher. He is currently signed with the Toronto Blue Jays. When he's not on the road, which sounds like it's quite frequently, but Erik calls Harrisonburg home with his wife Sarah, who is also here and is an EMU alum, and there are 3 children. The title of his talk today is Out at Home. Let's give it up for Erik.
All right, well, I appreciate you guys all coming out here. Now I'm a little more nervous. My wife made it. My mother-in-law made it, Jean Troyer. Give them a round of applause. So anyway, I'm not going to bore people who don't like baseball, so I'm not going to give you a lot of baseball stories. I want to kind of feed to the whole crowd. I want everybody to understand where I'm coming from, understand why I have an opportunity as a poor student and probably somebody that wasn't the greatest academic student, but also maybe not the best person on campus. You know, you'd look at me and be like, oh, one of those jocks like Leonard Dow. You know, Shirley's probably put us both down on our list of, okay, we got to watch these guys, even though we're sitting next to her on the same row. But Joshua 1:9, pretty famous verse. Everybody knows it. Haven't I commanded you? Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Be strong and courageous. You know, he says at the end of the verse, he says, everywhere you go, I will be with you. And that's something that, for me, has given me what I'd like to speak to you guys about. The perspective of things in your life, not just baseball. You know, you look at me, you say, wow, he's a baseball player. I have no idea what is going on in baseball, so I have no idea what this guy's going to talk about. I've been given an opportunity to, as Lizzie said, play baseball for a living, and that is something that probably a lot of men in here at 12 years old thought they could do. And they realized that, wait a minute, we got to go get a real job. And I've had everybody from my teachers to my dad to maybe sometime my wife think it's time to get a real job. But I've been blessed to have the opportunity to play. And I think if you were to turn over my baseball card, you'd look at the first area of perspective that I want to look at. That is, my perspective of my baseball career is different than the perspective that somebody else would take. In the last 2 seasons, I've played for 9 different organizations. So actually from Father's Day to Father's Day, I had played for 9 different teams. I went from Phoenix, Arizona to Houston, Texas with a 2-day notice. Packed up our entire apartment and flew my wife to the airport, or drove my wife to the airport to fly back to Harrisonburg. And then that was actually a short turnaround for me one time. I got called in, I was supposed to be in the lineup one day at 6:30. I was actually sitting in the hot tub getting ready for the lineup, getting ready to play, and they came in there, they said, "You're out of the game." By 5:45 the next morning, I was flying to Kansas City. And that was nice. I got to pick up some jewelry while I was there. They just give these away. Thank you. But anyway, so it is a perspective. People would say, well, this guy, he's not Bryce Harper. You know, well, Bryce Harper's, he's at home too. So all Nats fans, sorry about that. But you know, this guy, he's not the superstar on the team. But I have been extremely, extremely blessed to have an opportunity to play baseball. So you look at the back of my baseball card and you'd say, this guy kind of stinks. You know, I don't think he's a very good player. But I know the Lord has given me an opportunity to not only come and speak at things like this and hopefully get through to somebody about seeing the perspective in their life that, you know, I'm not going to tell you what you're going through isn't bad, but the Lord has something in store for each one of your lives. Even if you don't believe in God, even if you don't think He cares right now, He cares. Everything is, it's all in His plan. It's all in His season that He has in front of you. In 2004, I was, it was my second full season, and I was in, if my wife hadn't showed up, I wouldn't cry. It's gonna be 11 talk. It's gonna be 11 minutes, not 10, all right? So anyway, I'm in Florida. We finished our spring training, it's 2004. I'm in Florida, and I made the high A team. To people who don't know baseball, I'm not even gonna explain it. It was a good thing. I played one game. I went 1 for 3. I was hitting .333 on the season. I got called into the office. They said, you're gonna get put on the DL. I was like, well, I'm not hurt. Why do I have to go on the disabled list? Well, there's moves up top, all the way down. You're the fall guy. You're gonna go on what was called the Phantom DL. Long story short, because I'm only up for 11 minutes, they put me on the Phantom DL, and I got shifted and moved around, and we were apart. We didn't have any kids at that time. My wife and I were apart. We didn't have any kids. She finished teaching. She came down the day before my birthday, and the next day, I got shipped out to a team in New York, which, without making it a long story, it's probably going to be a long story, I keep saying that, but this is why they have it 10 minutes and less, it was the third time that I had repeated that level. It wasn't the third time I had gone back to that team, just the third time I repeated that level. And most of those people are at home working regular jobs after that happens. You know, you don't get 3 chances at a lower level as a college senior. It just doesn't happen in pro ball. And so we're like, well, what's going on? Well, Sarah got an opportunity to stay down in Florida because she couldn't come up to New York with us because plane tickets cost money, and making $800 a month was not conducive to buying plane tickets to fly all over the country to follow me. She got to spend, I think, like 4, maybe 5 weeks with her grandfather. And after the season was over, you know, we were kind of rehashing the season and everything. It's like, well, you know, are we going to continue to do this? Are we going to continue to, you know, fly around the country and kind of get moved around? That off season, her grandfather died. Crap, 12-minute talks. Okay, here we go. And he was a huge inspiration in her life. and for the Lord to use me to take away 1 year of baseball from me. And for her, in that situation, I know the Lord has perspective and has us in his hands, knowing where we should be in every season of our life. And I don't think that's just baseball. I think that's in everything, which gets me to why I had this picture up there the whole time. And I shouldn't cry. I didn't cry when he hit me, so it's not physical pain. But when this picture first came up, a raise of hands, who thinks good thing or bad thing? Good thing. Maybe 3 got some bad thing. Who's the person on the right? Okay, that's me, you're right. Who's the person on the left? Chipper Jones. Anybody doesn't know Chipper Jones, you didn't have cable, so he played for 15 years on TBS. He played for the Braves, or no, not TBS, TBS. Anyway, hopefully what I'd like for you guys to see is a perspective in life. Everybody looks at this picture and thinks a bad thing. For me, it was one of the highlights of my career, because he was out. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic, Erik. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your perspective about your journey, showing us your vulnerability, and really pulling back the curtain on some of the hardships and joys that life has brought you in your career. Next up is Leonard Dow. We've got a lot of athletes on the stage today. He is a 1987 EMU grad who still calls EMU his second home. He's currently the lead pastor at Oxford Circle Mennonite Church in Philadelphia, and he also serves as the bishop team of the Philadelphia District of Lancaster Mennonite Conference and is the vice chair of MCC, Mennonite Central Committee. He is also the record holder of career points for the men's EMU basketball team and the only player to be selected all-conference team for all 4 years. Well done, Leonard. He lives in Philadelphia with his wife, Rosalie, who is also an EMU grad, and his 3 children. His talk is titled, Every Day Except Sunday. Leonard.
I'm not that tall. I don't have a visual. You didn't tell me you're going to have a visual, Erik. I don't appreciate that. My first trip to EMU was in the late spring of 1982. I was accompanied by my mother, my older brother, and a close family friend. And we arrived late, which is common in city life. We arrived late here to EMU, 11, 12 o'clock. And so the person who was supposed to greet us had left. And Harrisonburg was dramatically different in 82 than what it is now. Everything shut down when it got dark. And so we didn't know where to go, what to do. 2 young women came by. They were walking across the campus, and they saw that we didn't know what we were doing, and they said, how can we help? And so we told them what was happening, and my mother said, hey, we're supposed to stay somewhere, but we don't know where to stay now. Can you help us? And they said, hey, won't you come with us? And they invited us into their apartment, and we slept there that night. 2 young ladies, 3 black men, and a little hobbit woman named my mother. In the light of 2016 reality of stand your ground and asking if Black Lives Matter, that particular story still warms my heart. They invited us in. And when I think about my time here at EMU, that phrase, invited in, is the phrase that I would say pictures my whole time here. I was invited in by everyone to everywhere on and off campus, even invited by my friends to travel with them, vacations and weekends. Because of my athletic ability, I'm told this used to be the gym and the basket used to be here somewhere. Because of my athletic ability and because of my bubbling personality, people always invited me in. I was invited in to skip freshman orientation the weekend before I arrived by the upperclassmen on the basketball team. They said, you don't have to go. I was invited in. It made it really difficult to find my classes the next week. I was invited into the office of my professors after class if I had missed a class because we had traveled, and they would give me the assignment, and they would talk about the game, of course, as well. I was invited in as well to the administration to speak at various fundraisers sometimes. They said, if you're up in Philly, why don't you come up to Franconia and share about what EMU was doing. I was invited in to order when I wasn't in the cafeteria, I was invited in to sit with everybody at the cafeteria. And when I didn't go in the cafeteria, I was invited into the snack shop to take my favorite chicken salad sandwich and wheat bread, and I was invited to sit, and we would talk about everything from sports, politics, and why the peace and justice kids were so angry all the time, and I thought it was because they wore those sandals all year long. I didn't know. I only got 10 minutes. Stop it. I was invited in to go to Spanky's for free pink lemonade after games and for those potato wedges with a lot of sour cream on it. I was invited into the homes of my peers. Some of you are here this afternoon by my peers' parents and uncles and cousins who live near the campus. I was always invited. I was invited in to join them on vacations to that place which begins with an M, Massanutten or something like that. I would go up there, or I would go to Outer Banks, or they would take me camping even though I didn't want to go. I was invited in to engage in deep conversations around, I was a business major, ethical business practice, profit over people, and to ask questions with the peace and justice folk. If Dr. King was, theologically, was such an Anabaptist, why aren't we studying him as well with the others? I was invited into those conversations, and sometimes we would ask questions around in those conversations, because the folk that used to always confuse me was the folk from Iowa. Anyone from Iowa? We would talk about you guys and say, how come everyone from Iowa always have to tell you they're from Iowa? I was invited in. I was invited even to Baltimore to watch Larry Sheets, another former baseball player and alumnus of EMU, who was playing for the Baltimore Orioles. He invited me into Baltimore, gave me free tickets. Just saying, Eric, just saying. My son is here. Can you help a brother out? My point in going down memory lane is to have you understand is that I was invited in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night by everyone, everywhere, every day. Every day except Sunday. You see, in my years at EMU, after being consistently invited in by so many of you, some of you, the one time I was not ever invited was to church. No one invited me into a Mennonite church while at EMU. No one invited me to come to their fellowship meal, to Sunday school class, to hear a word from the Lord, to see a child dedicated, to witness a believer's baptism, to hear testimonies during sharing time, and sometimes scary stuff that you're not sure should be shared at church. No one invited me. No one invited me to hear the angelic four-part harmony. No one invited me to see and learn firsthand ethnic Mennonite traditions, faith, and culture. No one invited me to share in the intimacy of God together with you. And perhaps most of all, no one invited me in, so I could not envision myself as being Mennonite. My first invite as a Mennonite to a Mennonite church came after my graduation because I married this beautiful Puerto Rican girl named Leonard Dow, whose father was a Mennonite pastor in Puerto Rico when we married. And she invited me to her church in Akron. Let me be clear, at the time I was only 18, 19, 20, whatever it was, and so to be honest, it never bothered me. In fact, if a 52-year-old Leonard would ask a 20-year-old Leonard, are you upset that you were not invited? I would say, no, that's cool, I get to sleep in. But upon being given an opportunity to do this TED Talk or TENTalk, I begin to reflect and I begin to ask the question, why wasn't I invited? Why was I invited every day by everyone, everywhere, Monday through Saturday, but Sunday morning I was left on my own? Did they not want me in their church? Could they not see me as part of their church? Obviously, that didn't work. And years later, the questions continue in my... Thank you, Mom. And years later, the question continues in my head sometimes. Yes, some clarity has begun to emerge after now 40 years in the Mennonite church. Is perhaps this is just an EMU story. Perhaps it's just EMU. No, it's not. I've spoken to folk from Goshen and people of color from Goshen and Bluffton. And even while at Christopher Dock, where E and I went to school together, now Dock Academy, I also experienced the same phenomenon of receiving an invitation everywhere by everyone, but not to church. Is it because I didn't grow up Mennonite? Maybe it's a theological difference. No, I have seen others be invited. Is it because, again, I'm a person of color? No, because my international brothers and sisters' experience is dramatically different as far as invitation. Or is it because I'm a black man and therefore a byproduct of a systemic issues and fear and racism and all the things that make us feel uncomfortable? Perhaps. I do not claim to have all the answers, and I only have about a minute left. But for me, over the years, there has been this lingering image when I close my eyes that when I close my eyes and I'm in public gatherings such as this in this wonderful space here at Homecoming, an image that leaves me unsettled at times, and that image, nevertheless, is that I'm standing before a group of Mennonites or people who flow with the Mennonite theology, and not unlike today, but instead of standing alone, as I often am as an African American in the Mennonite church, I'm standing with Gerald Hudson, who I graduated with, who's now a pastor. I'm standing with Fred Crawford, who played ball with me, who's now a pastor, but not in our church. I'm standing with Billy Scott before he passed away. He became a pastor, but not with us. And when I open my eyes, I lament to myself and wonder how enriched and how further along as a church would we be, how far along would we be as an institution in our ability to speak life and truth into the difficult questions facing our day of racism, classism, and violence if those that I've spoke about, and other African American and EMU alumnus like these were standing with me and were leaders in our church. We're fellow Mennonite pastors or board members or professors here at EMU, at EMS, and the Center for Peace and Justice. What if they now were part of us? My point is, not everyone should have to marry in to be invited in. Rather, let us begin today in greater measure with an invitation into church, into our faith communities. Yes, there are many hurdles once we are invited in, right? But I know it begins with the invitation before we can get to those other hurdles. And for someone who may be asking, why is this important to EMU? Why is this important to Homecoming? I would submit to you that perhaps at no other time in recent history as a country, as a church, both inside and outside the walls of EMU, we are struggling to find a pathway forward together in an ever-growing diversity of our country and of our world. We got to figure it out together. And for me, EMU is where I see the hope, the possibilities. In other words, EMU is indeed a Christian university like no other, specifically because it's a place who routinely experiences the gifts and challenges of diversity that we in the Mennonite church don't quite know how to navigate. But I want to be part of a church like no other too. So I'm curious. Don't get me started. So I'm curious, what would happen if EMU was as intentional as they were in recruiting me to come here, as intentional at recruiting me to be a leader? I'm old and out, and you already got me. But I met some incredible young African Americans at the black gathering, African American gathering. Devontae Oksana, I can't pronounce his name accurately. Because, my dear friends, by all statistics, the changing demographics of our nation, of our church, I would say depends on it. And we have the opportunity. But it begins with inviting them in. Amen? Amen. Amen.
Incredible testimony and powerful challenge to each of us to take home with us and to continue to think about it. It brought up a lot of very timely and relevant issues in today's world. Our final speaker today is Shirley Showalter, who is a 1970 graduate of EMU. She's the first person in her family to go to college, and she was named the first female president of Goshen College, where she served from 1996 to 2004. And I can just say that I'm so inspired by you for continuing to break glass ceilings. So thank you for that. After 6 years as an executive at Fetzer Institute in Kalamazoo, Michigan, she became a full-time writer here in Harrisonburg. Her memoir, Blush, A Mennonite Girl Meets a Glittering World, was named Best Spiritual Book of 2013 by Spirituality and Practice. She's currently a research professor here at EMU. She's married to her college sweetheart, Stuart Showalter, and they have 2 adult children and 2 grandchildren. How many of you, I think I'm talking to just the ladies, lived in North Lawn? Yeah, me too. Her talk is titled, All I Really Need to Know I Learned in North Lawn.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? Good. I'm doing really well, too. And I want to tell you about what it's like to be retired. I'm really enjoying it. I love it, except for one thing. I don't like the word retirement. I like another word better. The word is jubilación. And I learned that word from this woman, Isabel Allende, the novelist who has spoken on TED stages and has inspired millions of people with the idea that when we get to this stage in life, we can be, in English, jubilant. It's about jubilation and joy. And so I'm here today because I am interested in the connection between youth and age. We're all talking about what happened when we were here at EMC or EMU. And I want to celebrate that connection and ask a question. What is it that improves the odds that we will get to old age happy and healthy? Fortunately for us, we can actually go to research on this subject. A very famous study, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, has followed Harvard graduates and other groups for 75 years. They've interviewed people, they've done medical tests on people, and they have asked this question: what is the connection between happiness and whatever else we do in life? And you know, Harvard grads probably do a lot of things, but what they came up with might be astonishing. This is what they found. After reams of research on all of these fine people, they discovered that good relationships are the key to a happy life. Well, those of us who went to North Lawn didn't need to be told that. And today I'd like to break down some of those values that we learned in North Lawn into 3 areas and celebrate them with you. First of all, friendship. This picture was taken in 1966. And it is the place that is the star of our show today. There are very young Tina and Shirley, roommates, their first year in North Lawn. Soon we were joined by two friends, Gloria and Mary, and we were like those four sisters in Little Women, you know, really different from each other, but we were greater together, the sum being greater than the parts. I learned three things from these women. First of all, I learned that if you take a bucket of water on the balcony of North Lawn and you dump that water on seniors, you get to be very unpopular for a very long time. I also learned what it's like to give a really good hug, because I didn't come from a real hugging family. And I learned what it was like not to be the oldest in the family and always being right. Because they had a name for me, and it was the judge. And it was a nod of appreciation to a role I played. You know, the problem-solving executive kind of role. But it was also a warning. Don't get all self-righteous about that. In other words, these are the people who taught me friendship. Now, you might take a look at this photograph a little bit more closely. You'll see there is this bottle there on the sill. Honest, I have no idea what was inside that bottle, and I did not drink it. But it was the coolest candle holder in all of the floor. We kept dripping new colors of candles, wax, down that bottle and thought we were very cool. And then you will look on the wall and see those guitars on that burlap. Oh. It didn't take much to make us think we were groovy. And speaking of music, oh yes, sophomore year, Sgt. Pepper comes out. We are singing every one of those songs, four-part harmony, Beatles, really good, you know, alto part. And I was pretty sure when I prepared this talk that I remembered our favorite song from that album. Now, it would be relevant to our topic today. Can you guess which one it was?
When I'm 64.
When I get older, losing my hair, many years from, many years. We thought we would never get to be 64 years old. Now, 64 is behind us. But we give thanks. We give thanks for 50 years of friendship and for the faith that brought us together in the first place and has sustained us ever since. We were students in the war years. In fact, 1966 to 1970, the peak years of demonstrations against the war. As a member of the Peace Club, we asked this question: what would Jesus do? And some of us answered that question by saying, we think Jesus would be with the demonstrators. And so we went. This is not our group. However, it was a very hot day, and we were tempted. I actually appear on this photograph. I don't know if you can guess where I am, but as I said, it was a hot day. And I'm the one that's not wearing combat boots. I'm the one that's not wearing lots and lots of denim. I'm over there. Oh, I think I can even do this. Yeah. I'm in that white sundress because I read the weather forecast And I did that instead of Weather Underground Fashion. Because there's another interesting thing to me now, looking at this picture now, of course, is the relationship between everybody else going that way and turning around and going the other way. It seemed to me, as I look now, that that's a calling, to be a witness, and to be in that place where Christ and culture come together, being centered on the edge. Well, another thing that happened in my faith life during this time was the selection of a vocation. I did not become a judge, but I did become a teacher. And learning and teaching became my vocation at EMC, and it continued to be my vocation through a long journey that ended at Goshen College, where I could continue what I learned here, and where in 1996 I was called to be president, and I said yes. 8 years later, I was called again to the Fetzer Institute and had the privilege of working for love and forgiveness in an international environment. Wonderful years. When I retired, the first thing I wanted to do was to write a book about what it means to be Mennonite and what a faith journey since those years at EMC has been for me, looking back on my own childhood. Today, I am a resident scholar at the Collegeville Institute in Minnesota, enjoying living in Lake Wobegon, and also enjoying the third of these important North Lawn values, family. Now, it's about time for this person to enter the story. There he is, Stuart, the editor-in-chief of the Weather Vane. I was a freshman. That's what we said back then, by the way. And he had made a very vocal, he foolishly made a very vocal pledge that he was not going to date any freshmen. However, he did have a birthday, and we had a party at the Weather Vane office, and I decided to bake the cake, of course, in North Lawn, so that I could take it there. And on the top of the cake were the words, "Hail to the Chief." And when he put the thank you note that he wrote for the party, he ended the thank you note with the words, "And thanks to the squaw who baked the cake." Yeah. I agree, it was terrible. And I was a feminist even back then. And I took another look at that and was so delighted to discover that he had spelled squall, S-Q-U-A-L-L. Oh, so we had fun. We had this editorial flirtation on the bulletin board, back and forth, all kinds of repartee after that. And lo and behold, before you knew it, Stuart was walking up those steps to North Lawn, past the Passion Pit, and calling my name through whatever method we had back then. And we were dating, and then we weren't, because we were married. We were married between the time of the moonshot and Woodstock. So that puts you in mind of the times again. And we also were ready to journey together because our vocations were similar. We were teachers, we taught together, we went through many years. It's going to be almost 50. Thank you. And during that time, we had responsibilities at home, we had responsibilities at school, we had responsibilities at church, and I can tell you it wasn't always easy. And there were low times, and there were good times, and often there were times low and good all mixed together. But because we had faith, because we had friends, because we had family, all things we had learned in North Lawn, we were able to sustain a journey that began in Harrisonburg, went to Austin, Texas, then went to Goshen, Indiana, then to Kalamazoo, and back again to Harrisonburg. Now we are 8. Can you tell that grandchildren are a big part of our jubilación? Together we are learning. What we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose. For all that we love deeply become part of us. I know that you are here today because something touched you in North Lawn. And because that you have a version of being invited in, of being able to exercise your gifts, of being able to understand what is really important in life. And so the question becomes, what do we do? Together, I invite us to pray. To pray for the staff, for the faculty, for the students, for the leadership now, and for the new leaders, Susan Schultz-Huxman, as she comes in. I invite us to tell stories like you heard here today. I know that this room is full of stories, and that these stories need to be heard by young people in your lives. Young people today are getting the message that the most important things in life are to be hot, are to be rich, are to be famous. And that's not what the Harvard study showed. And it's not what we learned and already know from our time in North Lawn. So tell stories. Giving is a way we express our gratitude for the generosity offered to us by others and pass it along, knowing that no alma mater's price can be stated. In fact, her price is far above Ruby's. So, when you're asked, what did you learn in this TENTalk, you have an answer, okay? The answer is a formula. Happiness equals good relationships, equals faith, equals family, equals friends. And where did you learn it? North Lawn, yeah, all right.
So much nostalgia from my time in North Lawn. I'm ready to pack my bags and go back. And I have a very similar picture to the one of you in your dorm room with your 3 good friends, because I also met one of my best friends the first day of orientation, which I went to, unlike Leonard